Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are traveling back. I mean, way, way back. We are going to what we think of as the very beginning of civilization.
The very beginning.
We're heading to the land between the rivers.
Yeah.
But before we do, I want you to just, erase the picture you might have in your head of dusty ruins and museum cases.
Yeah, that comes later.
Exactly. I want you to imagine you're standing on the banks of the Euphrates River, maybe around 1750 BCE. What's that like?
It's a total sensory overload. You'd smell burning cedar incense from the temples, the smell of roasting meat from the daily sacrifices, and that ever-present smell of wet mud from the riverbanks.
And what are you seeing?
You're seeing a skyline,
Mm.
but it's not skyscrapers. It's these massive ziggurats, these stepped pyramids rising hundreds of feet into the air. They're not plain stone either. They're painted in brilliant blue and white tiles, just dominating these flat, endless plains.
It sounds majestic. And yet, when you look at the sources we have for today, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, all these ritual tablets, there is one very specific emotion that just hums underneath all of this grandeur. It's not peace. It's definitely not enlightenment. It's anxiety.
That is the perfect word for it, a constant low-level humming anxiety. Because in the world we're diving into today, the cuneiform cosmos, the universe isn't just mysterious or unknown.
No.
It is actively hostile. It's trying to get you.
And this is part of our ongoing mythology series. Usually when people talk about Mesopotamia, they focus on the tech.
Your inventions, right. The wheel, writing, the first laws.
Exactly. But our mission today is different. We're trying to get inside their heads. We want to understand how they built a universe of such rigid mathematical order out of mud and water and constant brutal warfare.
It's a fascinating psychological profile of an entire civilization. We tend to think of religion as a source of comfort, a security blanket.
Yeah.
For the Mesopotamians, theology was a survival strategy. It was a helmet and a shield.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately. You called it a theology of anxiety in your notes. Why were they so incredibly stressed out?
Geography is destiny. It's as simple as that. To understand their gods, you absolutely have to look at their map. The best way to do it is to compare Mesopotamia to, say, Egypt.
Okay.
In Egypt, you have the Nile. It floods every single year at the exact same time, almost to the day. It's a gentle flood. It deposits this incredibly rich, nutrient-filled silt, and the sun shines pretty much every day. It's a benevolent machine. It's reliable.
So the Egyptian gods are seen as steady, reliable, maintaining this cosmic order, or Mat, as they called it.
Exactly. But Mesopotamia. The Tigris and the Euphrates are violent, unpredictable rivers. They're fed by snowmelt up in the mountains of Turkey, so a sudden heat wave or a big storm hundreds of miles away can send a flash flood tearing down the plains with almost no warning.
And these are cities made of mud brick.
Right. So a flood wouldn't just ruin the harvest. It could literally dissolve an entire city overnight.
So you could go to sleep in your house and wake up to find your walls melting.
If you wake up at all, and then add to that these scorching winds that can whip up sandstorms that turn day into night, and the fact that the entire region is just a flat, open plain, there are no natural defenses, no mountains or seas to keep invaders out.
It's completely exposed.
Completely. The environment was capricious. It felt on a daily basis like it was actively trying to kill you.
Which means if you're projecting your reality onto the heavens, your gods are not going to be loving shepherds.
No, of course not. They're going to be the forces of nature personified. They were seen as distant, easily offended, and just terrifyingly powerful.
So the central tension wasn't, does God love me?
Not at all. The central question of Mesopotamian religion was, how do I keep the ceiling from collapsing on my head today? And how do I make sure the river doesn't wash my children away tomorrow? It's about appeasement and survival.
That sets the stage beautifully, or I guess terrifyingly. But before we get to the gods themselves, we need to clarify who we're even talking about. Because Mesopotamia isn't one single culture or country. It spans, almost 4,000 years?
A massive span of time, yeah. Which is why we need to look at what I like to call the stratigraphy of belief.
I love that term. Stratigraphy is a geology term, right? For digging up layers of dirt and seeing the layers of time in the soil.
And we apply the same principle to the culture here. Think of Mesopotamian religion as a layered cake. Or maybe more like layers of sediment in a riverbed. At the very bottom, you have the foundation, the Sumerians.
These are the originators.
They're the OGs, the absolute originals. They show up around 4000 BCE in the south, in what's now southern Iraq.
They invent writing, they build the first true cities like Uruk and Ur, and they create the core templates for the gods and the myths.
And they spoke a language that's a total mystery, right?
In a complete it's not related to any other known language on Earth. We can read it, but we don't know where it came from. Okay, so that's layer one, the Sumerians.
Then layer 2 starts to get deposited on top. This is the Semitic peoples. First the Akkadians, then the Babylonians further south, and the Assyrians up north.
These are different ethnic groups, speaking different but related languages.
Yes. They migrate into the region, they conquer the Sumerian cities, but, and this is the absolute key to the whole system, they don't erase the culture they find. They absorb it. They see its power.
It's like when the Romans conquered Greece. They didn't tear down the Parthenon. They just renamed Zeus to Jupiter, took the statues, and kept telling the stories.
That is a perfect analogy. It's a process we call syncretism. Old gods rarely died in Mesopotamia. They were just rebranded or merged. So the great Sumerian goddess of love and war, Inanna, she gets absorbed by the Akkadian-speaking peoples and becomes their goddess Ishtar. They're recognized as the same entity.
And the Sumerian sun god Utu
becomes the Semitic Shamash. Same job, different name on the business card. So when we read these texts, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, what we're often seeing is a later Babylonian remix of a much older Sumerian original track.
And this is where it gets really political, isn't it? Because the theology starts to follow the politics. When a city becomes powerful, its god has to become powerful too.
It has to. You can't be the hegemon of the known world and have a C-list deity.
Right. Give us an example of that political theology in action.
The best and most important example is Babylon and its god Marduk. For centuries, Babylon was a minor, unimportant town. Its local patron god, Marduk, was a nobody. He was like a minor agricultural deity.
Barely on the roster.
Exactly. But then, under kings like Hammurabi and later Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon conquers the entire region. It becomes the capital of the world, and suddenly you have a problem.
You can't have the king of the world worshiping a minor farm god. As I said, it looks bad for the brand.
It's terrible political theater. So the priests of Babylon did something audacious. They literally rewrote the history of the universe. They took the old creation myths, where older, more established gods like Enlil were the heroes, and they edited them. They inserted Marduk as the central hero who saves the cosmos.
So they retconned their god into the top spot.
They retconned the entire universe to justify their city's political dominance. It's a brilliant piece of propaganda.
And that brings us perfectly to the creation myth itself. The Enuma Elish, this is the famous rewrite you're talking about.
This is it, the Babylonian epic of creation. It was so important it was recited out loud every year at the Ekitu, the New Year festival, and it establishes the foundational chaos struggle motif of their entire worldview.
The idea that order isn't a gift.
It's not a gift. It isn't given freely. It has to be forcibly extracted from violence and disorder.
So let's walk through the Enuma Elish. In the beginning, before there was heaven or earth, what existed?
Just water. And it's not just one kind of water. You have a primordial pair. First, there's Apsu, who represents the fresh water. Think of the rivers, the quiet underground aquifers, the springs. He is male.
And his partner
is Tiamat. She represents the salt water, the churning, chaotic, endless ocean. She is female.
And they're just mingling together, the fresh and salt water mixing. It's not really life yet, is it? It's more like a wet inertia, a pre-cosmic soup.
It is static potential, but then from their mingling, they start to spawn the younger gods. And this is where we get the inciting incident of the universe, and it's not what you'd expect.
It's not some grand philosophical debate.
No. In the Bible, creation is an act of divine will, God speaks, and it happens. In the Enuma Elish, the cosmic conflict that creates the world starts because of a noise complaint.
A noise complaint? You're serious?
100% serious. The younger gods are, well, they're young. They're active, they're dancing, they're surging with energy, they're making a racket, and Apsu, the father, can't get any sleep. The text says their clamor jarred his nerves.
I feel for him, honestly.
He just wants some peace and quiet. He wants to return to that silent, static inertia of the beginning. So he goes to Tiamat and says, "Their ways are odious to me. By day I can't rest, by night I can't sleep. I will abolish them and destroy their ways."
That's extreme parenting. But there's a deeper metaphor there, isn't there? Noise isn't just about volume.
No, absolutely not. Think about where these stories were written. In the first true cities in human history. crowded, loud, bustling, chaotic places. Noise is a metaphor for life, for activity, for civilization itself, for a growing population. Apsu represents the silence of the void, of non-existence. The younger gods represent the beautiful, irritating chaos of life.
So the fundamental conflict is life versus non-existence.
Precisely. And in this first round, life wins. One of the younger gods, Ea or Enki in Sumerian, the god of wisdom, he discovers the plot. He uses a magic spell to put Apsu into a deep sleep and then kills him.
Okay, so problem solved.
Not quite. Ea builds his home on top of the corpse of Apsu, on top of the freshwater deep. But Tiamat, the mom, the saltwater ocean, she's still out there. At first she was ambivalent, but now the other gods goad her. They say, when they killed your husband, you did nothing. Now she's grieving, and she is enraged.
And she transforms.
She transforms from this passive, generative, watery force into a monster, a dragon of chaos. She decides to wage war on the younger gods to avenge her husband's death, and she creates an army.
The lists of these monsters in the text are incredible. They're like something out of a nightmare.
They are the archetypes of fear. The viper, the dragon, the sphinx, the great lion, the mad dog, the scorpion man. She births these 11 horrific creatures to tear the gods apart, and she elevates a new consort for herself, a god named Kingu.
Kingu.
She makes him general of her army, and to seal the deal, she gives him the Tablet of Destinies.
We see that term a lot in these myths, the Tablet of Destinies. What exactly is that? It sounds like a cosmic MacGuffin.
It is the ultimate MacGuffin. You can think of it as the legal title deed to the universe.
Yeah.
Whoever holds the tablet has the authority to decree fate. Their commands become reality. By giving it to Kindu, Tiamat is effectively saying chaos is now the legal and rightful ruler of all existence.
And the younger gods are, understandably, terrified.
They're paralyzed with fear. They try to confront her, but they fail. Her power is too immense. They need a champion. And this is where Babylon's hero enters the story.
Enter Marduk.
Marduk steps up. He's the son of Ea, born in the freshwater deep. He's young, brash, powerful, the god of Babylon. And he makes the other gods an offer.
A political bargain.
He says, I will fight her. I will defeat Tiamat and her monsters, but if I win, you must give me absolute supremacy. No more committees. I get to be the king of the gods. My word becomes law.
They agree, of course. They have no other choice. And the fight, it's not a simple wrestling match. It's elemental warfare.
It's spectacular. Marduk doesn't just go in with a sword. He gathers the 4 winds. He creates 7 new, terrible winds. He makes a net out of storms. He mounts his storm chariot, drawn by creatures called Slayer, Pitiless, and Flyer.
He weaponizes the weather?
He weaponizes the very fabric of the atmosphere. He drives his chariot into the abyss to confront Tiamat. When she opens her mouth to scream and swallow him, he does something brilliant. He drives the Imhulu wind, the evil wind, into her mouth so she can't close it.
So it inflates her body like a balloon.
Exactly. Her belly is distended. And while she's helpless, he fires an arrow. Not at her head, not at her armor. He shoots it right down her throat and it pierces her heart. She convulses and dies.
But the victory is just the beginning. This is the part that always sticks with me. He doesn't just kill the monster and walk away. He builds the world out of the monster's corpse.
Yes. The gore becomes architecture. It's the most brutal and profound part of the story. He stands on her dead body. He takes her massive carcass and splits her skull. Then he slices her body in half, like a dried fish, the text says.
Like a fish being prepared for the market.
It's so mundane and so cosmic at the same time. He raises one half of her body up to become the sky. It literally holds back the waters above, the chaotic waters of Tiamat that are still up there. He sets up bolts and guards to make sure they don't leak. He uses the other half to form the earth.
And her body parts.
He arranges them. Her saliva becomes the clouds. He pierces her eyes, and from the weeping sockets of the dead goddess flow the 2 rivers that give Mesopotamia life, the Tigris and the Euphrates.
That is just such a visceral, unforgettable image. The habitable world we live on is a structure built out of the chaotic, violent body of a dead god.
That is the core Mesopotamian insight into existence. Order is not natural. Order is not the default state. Order is something you have to fight for, kill for, and maintain constantly through vigilance and ritual. Otherwise, the waters of Tiamat will crash back down and drown everything. The world is a corpse we are living on.
Okay, so if the world is a corpse, what does that make us? In Genesis, for instance, humans are the crown of creation. We're made in God's image. We're the whole point of the exercise. What's the Mesopotamian take on why are we here?
The Mesopotamian take is brutally, almost comically utilitarian. In the Enuma Elish, after the world is built and the gods are celebrating Marduk's victory, they start to complain.
Of course they do.
They're tired, they have to maintain the cosmos, dig the irrigation ditches that water the earth, do the actual work. They want a break. They want to rest.
So they decide to outsource the labor.
They create humanity to be the help. Marduk explicitly says, I will create a savage. Man shall be his name. Verily, savage man I will create. He shall be charged with the service of the gods, that they might be at ease.
We were literally created so the gods could kick their feet up and take a nap.
We are the estate staff, the groundskeepers of creation. But the ingredients they use to make us are just as important as the reason. To make a human, they need a divine component. So they take Kingu,
The rebel general, Tiamat's consort.
the one who held the tablet of destinies and led the army of chaos. They declare him guilty of treason and they execute him. They sever his arteries. And the wise god Ea takes the blood of Kingu and mixes it with clay from the earth.
Blood and clay.
That is the fundamental theology of the human condition in Mesopotamia. We are made of clay, we are fragile, base matter, we come from the earth and we dissolve back into mud when we die. But we are animated by the blood of a god. We have a divine spark.
But, and this is a huge but, it's the blood of a rebel god, a god who was executed for treason against the established order of the universe.
Exactly. So that explains so much about human nature from their perspective. We have this divine intelligence, this spirit, but we also carry within our very blood the guilt and the rebellious, chaotic nature of the slain god. We are sinful from the start, not because we ate an apple, but because our very substance is made from a criminal.
Our destiny is to labor, to serve the gods, to keep the world from falling apart, and then to die and return to the clay. It's a very low anthropology, isn't it? It doesn't put humans on a very high pedestal.
Not at all. It's incredibly humbling, and it's meant to be.
I want to circle back to this idea of work and labor, because this connects to something that, well, it pops up all over the internet today. If you search for Mesopotamian mythology, you're going to get bombarded with ancient aliens.
Oh, yes. The Anunnaki, gold mines, spaceships.
Zechariah Sitchin.
The ancient astronaut theory. We absolutely have to address this because it so dominates the popular search results, but has almost nothing to do with what the actual academic sources say. It's a modern myth projected onto an ancient one.
Let's debunk it then. Let's be very clear. Where does this whole idea of humans were created by aliens to mine gold come from?
It comes from a willful mistranslation or a very, very creative reinterpretation of two key terms, Anunnaki and Igigi, and the story of their conflict.
All right, so let's break down the actual divine hierarchy as the texts describe it. Who are the Anunnaki, really?
In the Sumerian and Akkadian texts, the term Anunnaki simply means the princely seed, or offspring of An, the sky god. They are the upper-class gods, the aristocracy of heaven. They are the great judges who decree the fates. They are fully spiritual, powerful deities, not biological extraterrestrials in metallic suits. They're the board of directors.
And the gold mining. Where does that part of the theory come from?
That's a misreading of the story of the Igigi. The Igigi were another group of gods, a lower class. You could call them the working class gods. Before humans were created, the Igigi had to do all the manual labor of the universe.
So they were the ones digging the ditches.
Exactly. The texts, like the Entrahassis epic, are very specific. They say the Igigi toiled for 2,500 years. But they weren't mining gold for spaceship fuel. They were digging the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. They were digging irrigation canals.
Which makes perfect sense because in Mesopotamia, irrigation was life. That was the most important work imaginable.
It's the foundation of their entire civilization. And eventually the Igigi had enough. They were overworked and underappreciated, so they went on strike.
A strike?
A full-blown labor uprising. The texts describe it vividly. They set fire to their tools, their spades and baskets. They marched on the house of Enlil, the chief executive god, in the middle of the night and surrounded it. It was a siege.
So the gods are facing a Union picket line at the gates of heaven.
Yes. And the high gods were terrified. They were panicked. Enlil wants to just attack the strikers, but other gods counsel caution. They don't know what to do. The solution they eventually come up with, proposed by the clever god Ea, is us.
Humans.
Humans were created to be the scabs. We were created to break the strike of the Igigi. We were designed to take up their shovels so they could be freed from their toil and move up into management.
That really truly puts humanity in its place. We're strike breakers made of mud and the blood of a traitor. It's an incredibly humbling origin story.
It is, and it answers a fundamental human question. Why is life so hard? Why do I have to toil in the fields under the hot sun? The answer is because that is literally what you were designed to do, so the god Enlil doesn't have to.
So let's meet this management team properly, the gods themselves. We've mentioned Enlil, the boss. But the sources show a very structured, almost corporate hierarchy. It wasn't just a mob of gods, it was a bureaucracy.
A rigid bureaucracy, yes.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really fascinating from a cultural standpoint.
Right.
They used a mathematical system to rank their gods. We call it the sexagesimal system. It's base 60.
Which is why we still have 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 360 degrees in a circle, right? We're still using their math every single day.
We absolutely are. To them, 60 was a perfect foundational number. So the most important gods were assigned cryptographic, sacred numbers to denote their rank in the hierarchy. At the very top, with the rank of 60, was Anu.
The Sky Father.
He's the remote chairman of the board. He lives in the highest heaven. He is the ultimate source of all authority. In fact, the Akkadian word for authority was anutu, which literally means anuship. To have authority is to have the quality of Anu.
But like a lot of chairmen, he's not really involved in the day-to-day operations.
Very hands-off. He's distant. He rarely intervenes directly in human affairs. He delegates.
So who is the CEO? Who is the one actually running the show and, firing people?
That would be Enlil. His number is 50. He is the lord of air and wind. He is the executive ruler of the cosmos. He's the one who separated heaven from earth at the beginning of time, and he is harsh. Enlil is the one who decrees the fates, and he often seems to have a short temper.
He's the one who sends the flood because of the noise.
Exactly. He represents the sheer, impersonal force of authority. He's not necessarily evil, but he is dangerous and demands respect.
Then we have number 40. This seems to be the fan favorite, the one who breaks the rules.
That's Ea, or Enki, as the Sumerians called him, Lord of the Deep. He doesn't live in the sky. His home is the Aksu, that freshwater aquifer that lies deep beneath the earth. He is the god of wisdom, magic, craftsmanship, and technology. And crucially, he's the only one in the top tier who really seems to like humans.
He's the cosmic trickster, right? The divine lawyer who finds the loophole in the celestial contract.
That's a perfect way to put it. If Enlil issues a decree to destroy all of humanity, Enki will find a way to save a few of them by, say, talking to a reed wall and warning a human on the other side. He doesn't technically disobey the order, but he subverts it. He's the one who teaches humans how to build, create, and survive. He's the necessary balance to the harshness of Enlil.
Okay, so that's the top cosmic triad. Then you have a second triad, right? The astral triad, the moon, the sun, and a star.
Right. Organized by brilliance in the night sky.
Yeah.
The most important celestial body to them was the moon, Sin, whose number is 30. He is the lord of time, the calendar, the months. So important for agriculture and festivals.
And his son is the sun.
His son is Shamash, the sun, with the number 20. And Shamash is absolutely crucial because as the sun, he sees everything that happens on Earth during the day. The sun looks down on the whole world. So he becomes the god of justice and divination.
So if you're signing a contract, you swear an oath by Shamash.
Because the sun burns away darkness and lies, he is the ultimate witness. Then we have the number 15, the queen of heaven, the goddess Ishtar.
Ishtar, or Inanna in Sumerian, she seems to be absolutely everywhere in these myths, a real force of nature.
She's the wild card of the pantheon. She's the goddess of two things that don't seem to go together: love and war, passionate desire and brutal violence.
Sex and death.
The two most powerful forces in human life. She's associated with the planet Venus, which is both the morning star that heralds the dawn and the evening star that brings the night. She is the only female deity with this level of independent power and agency, and she is constantly breaking rules and crossing boundaries. She's volatile, ambitious, passionate, and incredibly dangerous if you get on her bad side.
The sources mention that her followers were prostitutes and soldiers.
Yes, because both of those professions exist on the margins of polite society, dealing with the rawest human drives of lust and violence. She is the force of dynamic, chaotic passion that disrupts the rigid, static order of a god like Enlil.
And we can't forget the storm guy. You need a weather god in a place like that.
Absolutely. Adad, or Ishkor. His number is low, only 6, but his importance is huge. He's the weather god. And in Mesopotamia, the weather is everything. He can bring the gentle rains that allow the crops to grow and the civilization to flourish, but he can also bring the destructive tempest, the hail and lightning that flattens the city. He is the very definition of a double-edged sword.
So you've got this whole corporate ladder of gods, all of them powerful, most of them dangerous. But humans still tried to interact with them, or at least they tried to grapple with the mortality that these gods imposed on them. This brings us to the heroes, and there is one name that stands head and shoulders above them all,
Gilgamesh.
the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's often called the first great work of literature. Full stop.
It's an absolute masterpiece, and it's so much more than just an adventure story with monsters. It's a profound, deeply moving meditation on friendship, loss, and the human condition. It's essentially a midlife crisis carved into 12 clay tablets.
So set the scene for us. Who is Gilgamesh at the start of the story?
He is the king of the great city of Uruk, and the text tells us he is 2/3 divine and 1/3 human.
Which seems like some very creative math, genetically speaking.
It's theological math. It's a way of saying he is mostly a god. He's stronger, more beautiful, more intelligent than any other human. But that 1/3 human part is his fatal flaw. It's the anchor that means, ultimately, he can die.
And at the start of the story, he's not a good king.
He's a terrible king. He's a tyrant. He's using his divine power without any wisdom or restraint. He's sleeping with any bride he chooses on her wedding night. He's bullying the young men of the city. He's working his people to death, building his magnificent walls. The people of Uruk cry out to the gods for help.
Please give him a distraction.
Basically, create a counterweight to his arrogance. So the gods agree. The goddess Aruru takes some clay, spits on it, and creates Enkidu.
And Enkidu is the complete anti-Gilgamesh.
The polar opposite. He's a wild man covered in matted hair who lives out in the wilderness with the animals. He runs with the gazelles, eats grass, and knows nothing of cities or civilization. He's pure, unadulterated nature.
Nature versus culture.
The ultimate dichotomy. A hunter discovers Enkidu and is terrified by his primal strength. He goes to Gilgamesh, who devises a plan. He sends out a temple harlot, a priestess of Ishtar named Shamhat.
And her job is to civilize him.
To civilize him through sex, she waits by the watering hole, and when Enkidu comes to drink, she seduces him. They're together for 6 days and 7 nights. And this act of human intimacy transforms him. He gets up, and the animals, his former family, now run from him. He has been changed. He has acquired wisdom and humanity.
Have been tamed.
So Shamhat brings him to Uruk to confront Gilgamesh. They meet in the street and they fight. A massive, brutal wrestling match that shakes the doorposts of the city. And it ends in a draw. And in that moment of mutual respect, in classic buddy movie fashion, they become best friends.
Soulmates, really.
Inseparable. They love each other more than anyone else. And now, with a friend to share his adventures, Gilgamesh channels his energy. They decide to go on a quest to make a name for themselves. They travel to the cedar forest to kill the monster guardian, Humbaba.
They succeed. Then they come back to Uruk as heroes.
They do, and the goddess Ishtar sees how beautiful Gilgamesh is, and she proposes to him. But Gilgamesh, full of hubris, brutally insults her, listing all her former lovers and how she discarded them. Ishtar is enraged. She goes to her father Anu and demands he unleash the bull of heaven to destroy Uruk.
Another monster.
A cosmic bull that causes drought and famine. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu fight it together and kill it. They are on top of the world. They feel invincible. They've defied monsters and gods.
But you can't just kill a goddess's sacred bull and get away with it.
No. The gods convene in council. They say, these two have gone too far. Their arrogance is out of control. One of them must die. And for complex reasons, they choose Enkidu.
And this is the pivot point of the whole epic, the great tragedy.
Everything changes here. Gilgamesh is forced to watch his best friend, his soulmate, die. It's not a heroic death in battle. It's a slow, painful, wasting sickness. Enkidu curses the hunter and the harlot who brought him to civilization. He wastes away, and Gilgamesh falls apart.
He doesn't just grieve, he is traumatized by it.
It breaks him. He looks at his friend's corpse, and the text says he watches a maggot fall from his friend's nose. And in that moment, he has a horrifying epiphany. That is going to be me. The same fate awaits me. The denial of death, which his power had allowed him, is shattered.
His 2/3 God part doesn't matter anymore. That 1/3 human part is all he can see.
It's all that matters. Terror sets in. He abandons his kingdom. He stops bathing. He strips off his royal robes and puts on mangy lion skins. He runs into the wilderness weeping. He's not looking for adventure anymore. He's looking for the cure for death.
He wants to find the one man who escaped it. Utnapishtim, the Noah figure. The only human who was granted immortality by the gods.
He undertakes this impossible journey. He travels to the ends of the earth. He battles scorpion men who guard the mountains. He passes through the tunnel of the sun. He crosses the waters of death with the help of a ferryman. He finally arrives, bedraggled and desperate, on the shore where Utnapishtim lives, and he begs him for the secret of eternal life.
And Utnapishtim gives him a test. A simple one.
A devastatingly simple one. He says, "You want to conquer death? Let's start with Death's little brother. Conquer sleep. Just stay awake for 7 days.
And Gilgamesh.
Falls asleep almost immediately. It's so painfully, relatably human. He's exhausted from his journey and his grief. He fails. He can't even stop himself from napping for a week, let alone stop himself from dying forever. Napishtim's wife bakes a loaf of bread for every day he sleeps and lines them up to show him how utterly he failed.
That is just humiliating.
It's the ultimate humiliation. Utnapishtim tells him the story of the flood, explaining his immortality was a one-time gift, and sends him away. But as he leaves, Utnapishtim's wife takes pity on him. She convinces her husband to give Gilgamesh a consolation prize.
Not immortality, but something.
He tells him about a plant that grows at the bottom of the ocean. It has a thorn like a rose, and it doesn't grant eternal life, but it does restore youth. It makes an old man young again.
The cosmic Botox plant.
Essentially, Gilgamesh is overjoyed. He ties stones to his feet, dives to the bottom of the sea, and gets the plant, though it pricks his hands. He has it. He's heading back to Uruk, planning to share it with the old men of the city first to prove it works.
Right.
But on the way home, he stops to bathe in a cool pool of water. He leaves the precious plant on the bank. A snake smells the plant's fragrance. It slithers up, eats the plant, and immediately sheds its old skin, leaving it behind, reborn.
The snake gets the rejuvenation. Gilgamesh is left with nothing.
Absolutely nothing. He sits down on the ground and weeps. It is the moment of ultimate failure and despair. He has lost everything.
But the ending of the epic isn't sad, is it? It's something else.
It's poignant. It's wise. He returns to Uruk, empty-handed and mortal. But as he approaches his city, he stands with the ferrymen. He looks at the great walls that he built in his arrogant youth, and he turns to the ferrymen and says, "Go up, Urshanabi, walk on the wall of Uruk, inspect the foundation terrace, examine the brickwork. Is its brick not kiln-fired? Did not the 7 sages lay its foundations?"
He finds his immortality not in his body, but in his work. In the walls.
Exactly. Humans die, friends die, even demigods die. But what we build, our cities, our families, our laws, our stories, that can remain. Legacy is the only afterlife we truly get. It's a profound and mature acceptance of human limitation. It's the lesson he had to lose everything to learn.
Grim but grand.
That's the motto of the whole civilization.
So that's the myth, the literature. But let's talk for a minute about the daily reality. Because these people weren't just telling stories. They were living in the shadow of these massive temples, serving these gods every day. You used a fascinating word in the notes, transubstantiation, when talking about the cult statues. Can you explain that? Because to us, a statue is just a block of stone or wood.
To us, it's a representation. It's a symbol. To them, after the rite rituals, it was the god. It was a vessel for the divine presence. Through a very complex, secret, multi-day ritual called the Mispai, which means the washing of the mouth, the statue was awakened.
Washing of the mouth.
Yes. Priests would take the newly crafted statue out to a special location by the riverbank. They would perform ceremonies to symbolically cut its ties to its human makers. They would then ritually open its eyes so it could see, its ears so it could hear, and wash its mouth so it could speak and eat. They believed that by performing these rituals, the actual spirit of the deity literally entered and inhabited the object.
So if you walk into the temple sanctuary, you aren't looking at a symbol of Marduk. You are in the same room with Marduk himself.
Yes, which is why the care and feeding of the god was the most important job in the entire civilization. The temple priests would serve the statue to massive, elaborate meals a day on golden platters. They would bathe it. They would clothe it in fresh, expensive linens. They would put it to bed behind a curtain at night.
And what happened to all that food?
Well, the idea was that the god consumed the spiritual essence of the food. Then the physical leftovers were taken and eaten by the king and the high priest. It was a very practical system. But it meant the king was literally, ritually dining with the god every single day.
Speaking of the king, there is one ritual that I think just perfectly captures the precarious relationship between the king and the god. The Akitu festival, the New Year festival in Babylon.
The humiliation of the king. This is one of the most incredible pieces of political theater in the ancient world. On the 5th day of the 12-day festival, the king of Babylon, the most powerful man on earth, is brought into the inner sanctuary of the temple. He stands before the living statue of Marduk. Alone with the high priest. The high priest then walks up to the king and strips him of his royal insignia. He takes his crown, his scepter, his weapon. He leaves him looking like a common man.
He leaves him defenseless before the god.
And then the priest slaps him hard across the face.
He slaps the king.
Yes, hard enough to make him cry. In fact, the ritual texts state that it is a bad omen if the tears do not flow. The tears are a sign of the king's genuine submission. Then the king has to get on his knees and recite a negative confession saying, "I have not sinned, O Lord of the lands. I have not been negligent of your Godhead."
It's a total shocking inversion of power.
It's a cosmic reset button. It was designed to remind the king, the priests, and the entire populace that the king's power is not his own. He is merely a steward, a shepherd appointed by the god. He can be stripped, slapped, and humbled by the god at any moment. It grounded absolute autocracy in a required public display of humility.
I feel like a lot of modern politics could use a mandatory slapping ritual.
It might certainly improve accountability.
So you serve the gods, you work the fields, you build your city walls, and then inevitably you die.
Right.
We know Gilgamesh failed to find immortality. So what happens to the regular person? What is the Mesopotamian afterlife?
It is called Irkalla, the land of no return. And honestly, it's terrifying. It isn't a heaven and hell split based on your morality on earth. There's no judgment of good versus evil. It's just down.
So everyone goes to the same place.
Everyone. Kings, priests, peasants. Gilgamesh is there. Enkidu is there. The myths describe it as a vast, damp, dark, dusty cavern deep beneath the earth, ruled by the goddess Ereshkigal. The dead are clothed like birds, covered in feathers. They sit in perpetual darkness, and they eat dust and clay.
That's it. For eternity. Just eating dust.
That is your fate. Unless you have family back on earth who remember you. This is where the etimu, the ghost or spirit, comes in. The condition of your spirit in the underworld depended entirely on the actions of the living.
How so?
If you had a son, a caretaker, or a pakadu whose job it was to perform rituals for you, specifically to pour water libations into the ground for you and to speak your name out loud, then your spirit could be at peace. You could drink that cool water instead of eating the dust. Your name being spoken kept your memory and therefore your essence alive.
So having children was basically your eternal retirement plan.
Literally. It was the most important duty. If you had no children or if your family forgot you and stopped the rituals, you became a hungry ghost, a tormented spirit, and you would find a way to escape the underworld and haunt the living, bringing sickness, nightmares, and bad luck until your needs were met.
So the rituals of remembrance weren't just about love and respect. They were a form of protection. I have to pour water for Grandpa so Grandpa doesn't come back and give me a fever.
It was a social contract that extended across the barrier of death. It created a massive cultural and religious incentive for family continuity and for having children, especially sons.
We're getting close to time, but we absolutely have to touch on the end times. Or maybe more accurately, the cosmic reset, the flood. We've mentioned it a few times with Utnapishtim.
The Great Deluge, yes.
Right.
It's impossible to overstate the impact this story had on the world. The biblical flood story in Genesis is, in its plot points, almost identical to the much older Mesopotamian flood stories found in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Epic of Atrahasis.
The details are the same.
Eerily similar. A god is angry, decides to wipe out humanity. One man is chosen. He's given secret instructions to build a huge boat. He covers it in pitch. He brings his family and animals aboard. The flood comes. Everyone else dies. The boat lands on a mountain. He sends out birds, a dove, a swallow, a raven to find dry land. When he gets out, he makes a burnt offering, and the gods smell the sweet savor.
So it seems like a direct borrowing, but there's a crucial twist, right? The mechanics are the same, but the motivation, the engine of the story, is completely different.
That's the key. The biblical author takes the well-known Mesopotamian chassis of the story, but swaps out the theological engine. In Mesopotamia, as we discussed, the flood happens because of noise. The god Enlil is annoyed by the clamor of an overpopulated earth. It's a capricious, grumpy act.
It's not about whether humans were good or bad. It's just about them being loud.
Exactly. But in the Bible, the flood happens because of sin, because the earth was filled with violence and moral corruption. The story is transformed into a monotheistic polemic. It's an argument against the Mesopotamian worldview, saying, our God isn't petty and capricious like Enlil. He doesn't drown you because he's grumpy. He does it as an act of divine justice.
It's a theological correction of a shared cultural story.
Precisely. But the fact that these stories survived at all is a miracle. They were written on clay tablets, which were buried under the ruins of the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh for 2,500 years. And when they were dug up and translated in the 19th century, the Victorian world was shocked. They realized that the Book of Genesis wasn't the oldest book in the world. It was part of a much older, ongoing conversation.
Before we wrap, we have to mention the symbols and secrets. We talked about their desire to read the mind of the gods. How did they do that?
Through divination. They believed the universe was a giant text, that everything was a potential omen, a message from the gods, and they developed complex systems to read it.
You mentioned liver reading in the notes, which sounds gruesome.
Extispicy, yes. They believed the liver was the seat of emotion and thought. So a special priest, a bar, would sacrifice a sheep for a specific question should the king go to war, and then carefully remove and examine the liver. They had clay models of livers divided into sections that told them what different marks meant. A hole here, a discoloration there. It was like a biological binary code.
Reading the source code of the gods in sheep organs.
And of course they looked up. Astrology was born here. They called it the writing of heaven. They meticulously tracked the movements of the planets, which they saw as the gods themselves walking across the sky. They created the zodiac. If Mars, the war god, moved into a certain position, it meant something for the king. This is why we have such incredibly accurate astronomical records from Babylon. It wasn't science for science's sake. It was a matter of national security.
And demons. We have to talk about Pazuzu. Everyone knows that face.
We do. Most people know him from the movie The Exorcist, that terrifying, snarling, demonic face. And he was a demon. He was the king of the wind demons, bringer of famine and pestilence. He was evil. But in the Mesopotamian worldview, sometimes you had to fight fire with fire.
How do you mean?
There was another, even more feared demoness named Lamashtu. She was a monster who would creep into the houses of pregnant women and try to snatch their newborn babies. She was the terror of every mother. So to protect themselves and their children, women would wear amulets of Pazuzu.
They would wear an amulet of the king of demons to protect themselves.
Yes. The idea was that Pazuzu, being an evil and powerful demon himself, was an enemy of Lamashtu. His terrifying presence would scare her away. He was like a demonic guard dog, a shield. It's a great example of their magical thinking. It was practical, defensive, and it fully acknowledged that the world is full of dangerous, malevolent forces you have to deal with.
So, as we wrap up this entire deep dive, let's look at the legacy. We've touched on the Bible, the 62nd minute, the Zodiac. But what is the biggest, most profound takeaway for us, sitting here in the 21st century looking back at all this?
I think it comes back to where we started, that deep, humming anxiety. We still feel it, don't we? We still worry that climate change or the economy or a war or a pandemic will sweep away our cities and our way of life. The Mesopotamians were the first people in history to live in cities, to face these complex systemic threats. They were the first to look that kind of existential chaos right in the eye.
And they didn't lie to themselves about it. They didn't invent a comforting story that everything would be okay.
They didn't. They built a theology that acknowledged that the universe is probably scary and largely indifferent to human suffering. But, and this is the crucial part, they said, we will build civilization anyway. They used their fear. Their anxiety produced the first laws to create social order. It produced the first writing to keep track of things. It produced the first cities to protect themselves. They built civilization because they were afraid of the chaos, not in spite of it.
And like Gilgamesh, at the end of his journey, looking at those walls.
Exactly. Gilgamesh failed to live forever. But the walls of Uruk, the civilization he built, stood for millennia. Their stories, written on clay, outlasted their empires. They taught us that civilization itself, what we build, what we write down, what we leave behind for others, is the only real immortality we get. And their conclusion seems to be that maybe, just maybe, that's enough.
That is a fantastic and profound place to leave it. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through all the terrifying, brilliant layers of the cuneiform cosmos.
It was a true pleasure.
And thank you to you, our listeners, for diving deep with us. If you enjoyed this journey into the ancient mind, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us keep digging.
And maybe go out and build something that will last.
Exactly. Stay curious.